So I think the broader competitive Splatoon community has a bit of a problem. We tend to have a one-track mind. I mean, we're very thorough about maps, about weapons, about strategies, but there is an aspect of the game that we neglect. The meta game. And to be clear, that is the game about the game, or rather, it's the game about the game about the game. Player psychology and expression are oft ignored in favor of what gear ability one's running. We always talk about roles and what they're supposed to do, but we rarely talk about how players meet that end, which is unfortunate. Player psychology is one of the most important aspects of competitive games in general, but I've never seen anyone in the Splatoon community take a deep dive on the inner machinations of players. And because of this, I think that we lack a general knowledge of that second layer of the game. But while we have no ideas, there are a few notions that we can steal from another genre.
Squidkind knew that they cannot change society, so instead of reflecting on themselves, they blamed the team, heaven or hell.
Kai versus champion. Duel 1. Let's rock.
The FGC is the grandfather of all esports, where the mightiest of blows are thrown by the sweatiest of bros. Now, while fighting games might seem like this high-octane, guttural battle between two feral beasts who want nothing more than to tear out the throats of their opponents, fighting games are so much more. At their core, what they really are is chess. While combos are important, they aren't really what wins you a match in a fighting game. It is by far more important that you know your opponent than any combo could ever be. When you start noticing their patterns, when they attack, when they block, what options they tend to go for, that's when you can turn it around on them and punish. And this is true across pretty much every fighting game. Doesn't matter if you're playing Guilty Gear on EVO's main stage or just playing Melty Blood in the bathroom. Understanding your opponent is key to winning any match. As a result, many great fighting game players over the years have put out a ton of ideas on how players operate and how players think. And while Splatoon isn't a fighting game, yet, a lot of the theories developed by these players are able to cross many genres. Now, the hypothesis I think will help lay the foundation for the psychological theory about our game is one put forth by Laugh, a former Street Fighter Cross Tekken EVO champion. Laugh breaks down players based on how they look at and how they improve at the game. Based off their pattern of behaviors, they can be broken down into one of three distinct archetypes: the brains, the heart, or the body. These three archetypes attempt to define the ways different players interact with their games. All three look at different parts of the game and try to improve by focusing on that facet. I'm going to go over these archetypes briefly and attempt to contextualize them to Splatoon. However, if you're interested in a more broad discussion of these archetypes, I recommend Core Gaming's video on the subject or GekkoSquirrel's short series covering all three archetypes. Links will be in the description. Anyway, let's start with the brains. Brain players are the most technically minded archetype. When they look at the game, they don't see a fun squid game to play with friends. They see a set of frame data and stats to optimize. They're the players you're gonna see on Discord at 3 in the morning looking over an Excel spreadsheet going, "Yo, this game is fire!" They look at every option at their disposal. They don't just play favorites with their weapon, they want the best weapon. They would never pick gear that just looks good. They would much rather wear a bike helmet, a tweed hoodie, and armored shoes if it meant they were more efficient. Before the game, they're making sure that their gear, even down to the very last sub, is absolutely perfect. During the game, they're taking optimal pathing and using their knowledge of frame data to squeak out wins that most people wouldn't dare go for. And after the game, they're blaming their teammates. In the mind of a brain player, data is king. This does mean that on the battlefield, brain players might be some of the slowest. After all, why rush in head first when there's a lot of data to analyze so that I can come up with an optimal solution? What weapons are my teammates using? What about my opponents? How many people are dead? Who has special? Where are they pressuring? Where's my team? And why did they choose undercover, brother? Brains try to look at all of this mid-match in order to come up with strategies on the fly. They'll usually have a plan coming into the match, but they'll also be the first ones to try to figure something out as soon as it goes south. This can lead to a bit of choice paralysis. After all, it's hard to analyze so much at once to figure out what the safest or more efficient option is. Luckily, their ability to come up with strategies on the fly improves the better they get at the game. Not only will they know more about the frame data, how gear works, and every little technical detail of the game, but they'll also be able to make those decisions far quicker. They still might not be as fast on their feet as other players, but they'll be able to keep up. However, this contemplative playstyle leads to some roles better than it does others. Brain players might be far more likely to find themselves wanting to play in the mid-line. They won't be in as immediate of danger as someone on the front lines, but they'll still be able to move up to help enact plans. This doesn't mean that they're always going to be in the mid-line. Some might go backline because they want a better view of the battlefield. Perhaps some go frontline because they know their better knowledge of the game's data will lead to winning more fights. However, their technically minded playstyle does leave them with a few vulnerabilities. Because brains are so focused on what the best option is, they might not consider how to deal with unoptimal choices. Well, unfortunately for brains, the vast majority of players don't think like they do and are far more prone to making mistakes. While a majority of these are due to a lack of foresight, there are some players who intentionally make these decisions in order to throw off their opponent. The hearts. You see, heart players don't play with their heads. Instead, they try to play with yours. While a brain may have the game data down pat, a heart goes beyond it. They look to influence the minds of the other players. Even the smartest of players are prone to bias, and hearts are just jumping to take advantage. They're adept at reading you, your movements, your positions, your habits. They'll use this to try to lure you into or create situations where they have advantage. Think they've retreated? Dead. Think that they've hidden behind cover? Dead. Think that they don't know every aspect of your game plan.
You will learn today!
This might be as simple as taking an unconventional route to flank, or as simple as recognizing that the Sploosh player definitely picked that weapon because they think they're better at combat than they really are. Their tactics are the hardest to pin down. I mean, after all, if your strategy relies on the folly of your foes, then it's bound to change every match. But there are some commonalities. While alternate routes on some maps may be lacking, being unconventional while approaching is vital. Flanking, sharking, moving erratically, all of these can throw off opponents and make them easy pickings. Perhaps because of this, hearts are the most likely to gun for the front lines. Aggressive, in-your-face, mobile weapons are exactly what's needed to strike foes down before they're made aware. Yet in backline and midline positions, they're still able to bait out reactions and punish accordingly. This playstyle can make them some of the most frustrating to deal with. They feel like they can counter your every move. However, this reliance on prediction can leave them a bit vulnerable themselves. If you notice what they're doing, their efforts are completely wasted. Even noticing the surprise a split second before it's going to happen could easily lead to you taking them out. To beat a heart, you must be observant and quick. Unfortunately, a lot of players struggle with that. However, there is a player type that does excel in quick reaction times and perception: the bodies. Body players embody raw execution. They're lab monsters. They try to hone everything to perfection. I mean, after all, why worry about an opponent's attack when you're just gonna splat them faster than they could ever splat you? Does strategy really give you an advantage?
Maybe. Maybe. I've yet to meet one that can outsmart a bullet.
Meta? Positions? Bro, they're right there, just shoot them. Bodies are the simplest archetype. Their game plan is far simpler than that of both the heart and the brain. After all, their goal is pure mechanical skill. That isn't to say that bodies are dumb or bad in any way, they just focus on their own capabilities. Their game plan is simple, but they execute it perfectly. Maintaining a perfect aim, making sure your movement is flawless, and ensuring you know every bit of tech that can be done with a weapon. That's where bodies excel. This simple yet practiced playstyle is best suited for backline roles. Controlling area with a Hydra, an E-leader, a Tri-stringer, it becomes incredibly easy with patience and practice. Sure, it may take time, but they'll be able to snipe you from the slightest peak soon enough. However, like other roles, that's not the only role that bodies are going to want to play. Midline bodies are able to poke and keep pressure on thick without giving a single inch. Frontline bodies can use their impeccable movement and their incredible aim to outgun and outflank any enemy. No matter where they sit, bodies will be able to excel. However, this simple, unyielding game plan can be both a boon and a bane. Yeah, they can splat you faster than most, but they can fail to recognize when they're at a disadvantage. Flank them, get on a perch, ambush them, anything that gives you a leg up. With a good plan, their skill can't save them. So that begs the question, which archetype am I? You are every archetype. All players exhibit a mixture of all three of these archetypes to varying degrees. You may be predominantly a brain, but that doesn't mean you ain't a bit of a body too. You could be a brain heart, you could be a body brain, or, like me, you could fail in every category. Knowing which archetypes you embody can help you capitalize on your own strengths, but more importantly, can make you aware of the areas that you're neglecting. If you haven't noticed, each archetype focuses on a different layer of the game. Brains care about the metagame, hearts care about the other players, and bodies care about their own individual capabilities. These are three very different ways of experiencing and understanding the game. But once more, that begs the question, which of these ways of understanding the game is best? Well, to get an insight on that, it's best to look at top-level players. Watch any match by two top-level teams. Doesn't matter if it's Last Resort, Starburst, Alliance Rogue, whomever. If you watch every player for long enough, you'll notice a trend. All the players involved clearly think about and act on every aspect of the game. You can't tell which basic archetype they are because they've worked hard to improve at every facet. And I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of players. Most want to stick to their guns and don't really want to try out something new. But looking at the top, we know that doesn't work, at least not all the way. By clearly focusing on just one aspect of the game, you're neglecting the other two. Archetypes aren't some be-all end-all box to put yourselves and others in. They're a jumping off point. It gives you a way to look at yourself and how you approach the game to realize what it is that you're not approaching. All three aspects of the game are important, but by not consciously recognizing all three, you're unnecessarily impeding your own growth. If there's anything you should take away from this video, it's to understand yourself. Understanding yourself and your own habits. Don't just look at what you do well. Try to look at your assumptions about the game, the players, and yourself. I'm sure if you really think about it, there are some gaps in your understanding. There are some assumptions that may not necessarily be true. Stop blaming the beasts. Reflect upon yourself. Try to find those gaps so that you can break them. And once you do, you'll be able to form a much more complete understanding of the game. Hey guys, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my buddy Josh. He did the vocals for the Guilty Gear parody at the beginning of this video. He does a bunch of vocal work on YouTube, and he's also got a Twitter that he regularly posts on. If you're interested in seeing any more of him, links will be in the description. And in the meantime, thanks for watching.